The following episode is dedicated to the memory of Miami Vortex player Michael Beaton. Welcome to week 17 of the Delta League podcast. And we wish this was under better circumstances, but earlier in the week, Miami player Michael Beaton, who was doing some home renovations, slipped when the scaffold he was on suddenly collapsed, breaking his neck. Paramedics arrived, but they say he died at the scene. That is the second player we have lost this year. In lieu of this, the league suspended the Miami game with Detroit and Philadelphia to the latest possible time, and also looked into suspending the other 5 games, but no alternative scheduling could be made in such short notice, so they had to go forward as scheduled. There was some low-scoring games this week, and now we understand why. The Wheel of Fire tournament will go forward as scheduled next Friday with a special tribute to Beaton. Now, let's go off to Toronto, where the Titans are hosting Atlanta and Vancouver. And in this one, Toronto wins it. Toronto 28, Vancouver 18, Atlanta 15. Despite the fact that Atlanta's season was on the edge of a knife, they lost this game, almost assuring that they would miss the playoffs. But unfortunately, they had to wait a few days for it to be official. This game was a little chippy, with a few yellow cards doled out, but Toronto methodically, as they've done to multiple teams this year, gone out, done business, and went home with quattro. For Toronto, leading the way, it was Valdemar Odette and Gord Maurer with 5 goals each. For Atlanta, it was Casey Dobrichka and Jamie Ekstrom with 3 goals each. And for Vancouver, it was Bundy Reed with 5 goals. And in the end of this one, Toronto picks up the 4 points. Vancouver, 2 points. Atlanta, 0. Now, we'll move on now to Boston, where the Revolution play host to New York and Phoenix. And in this one, Phoenix wins it. Phoenix 25, Boston 19, New York 16. New York fans are getting a little tired of owner Adamo Principe, so much that they got a signed petition with 15,000 signatures asking them to sell the team. I wonder if they're going to sell the team. Now, Boston fans are also getting tired of New York fans, who they brawled with during and after this game. Makes you wonder if the team showed as much testicular fortitude as the fans, they'd be in the bloody playoffs. This game was pretty chippy, with 3 yellow cards going to Phoenix alone. A group of Phoenix fans jumped the barricade and went after Boston player Kobe Dominguez. Kobe is a real, genuine dude. Lots of people really like him. But this group of Pharaohs fans was really giving him a hard time. Told the official, "If you don't do something about them, I will." Turns out they did nothing, and they proceeded to call him a freaking spick, and Kobe called them a fucking hick. I have no idea how this did not earn Dominguez a yellow card or worse, but the fans waited to the end of the second period, jumped the barricade, and went after Kobe. Nobody was hurt except for the heads of the Phoenix fans as they hit the door of the police cruiser. Now, for Boston, leading the way, it was David Toro and Lord Matthew with 5 goals each. For New York, it was Luke Brownlee and Rock Weinstein with 3 goals each. And for Phoenix, it was Tremaine Wolitzer with 6 goals. And in the end of this one, Phoenix picks up the 4 points. Boston, 2 points. New York, nothing. Now, let's move on now to Chicago, where the Pride are playing host to Memphis and LA. And in this one, LA wins it. LA 18, Memphis 15. Get ready for this. Chicago 5. 5 fucking goals. Chicago's 5 goals was the lowest score ever in the history of Delta. Now, this game almost didn't start because of the discovery of a suspicious package. If the police only knew what a total bomb the Pride would lay in this game, they would have charged the team with a federal offense. Bottom line is the fans were stuck outside for over an hour and were subjected to this pathetic performance. Chicago player Kipper Grimmett came to the court with a shaved head. No particular cause given. Zero reaction to this because the boos were so vociferous based on the team's performance. Memphis performed very well in this game despite the fact that earlier this week there was a small fire in their stadium. More to come later. This entire game was fraught with violence. Chicago players collected 6 yellow cards and 2 black cards total. Cameron Baptista gets caught on a bad trip. Then Yorios Dokidis, probably in another drunken state, starts swearing at the official. Then Baptista just makes a very selfish play and takes out Jack Charette. That's card number 2. He's gone to the eternal sin bin. Now, you think it's over, but Chicago is just having the worst game imaginable. And then Oscar Zenga gets carded for post-goal shenanigans. Fab Whittlesley says, "Why can't I get carded too?" So she mouths off to the ref, and she gets carded. Georgios Stokidis, you think it's over, but it's not. He gets up again, tosses a towel at the ref. He's gone for the game. Just a total loss of composure for a team that really needed to go home on a positive note, but end this story under the worst possible circumstances. Just embarrassing. Now, controversy from within the Chicago team as Pride mascot, the Chicago Wolf, was doing more than blowing the house down. He was blowing other people. He was up to various sexual rendezvous and inappropriate behavior that the team did not want to saddle themselves with, so they cut ties with him this week. These team mascots are giving people that work under masks a bad name. They've got to change the name of this team from the Pride. Shameful. Now, for Chicago, oh God, it was Star Palmer, Win Finwarley, Cameron Baptista, Boot Farr, and Kipper Grimmett, 1 goal each. Give me a frickin' break. Now, for Memphis, it was Gina Rankin with 4 goals. And for the Los Angeles Fallen Angels, it was Frank Viano, 6 goals. And in the end of this one, LA picks up the 4 points. Memphis, 2 points. Chicago, nothing. Now, let's move on to Dallas, where the Lone Stars are hosting Washington and Seattle. And Seattle comes back with a vengeance. Seattle 36, Washington 21, Dallas 16. There was another suspicious package that delayed the start to this game, which the bomb squad proceeded to blow up, but it's quite possible this delay really ruined the Lone Stars' rhythm. But let's be honest, they've been out of sync for quite some time. Now, during this game, Seattle captain Vladimir Millet clinched the scoring championship, but he did go down in the third period and had to be stretchered off. His femur is broken. He's out 12 weeks, and he's gonna miss the tournament next week. Just a catastrophic injury at the wrong time. Now, well, the only people here that enjoyed this game were a group of Seattle fans who were, for the most part, pretty unoffensive. These fans, however, were very drunk and very loud, and the fact that Dallas lost this game and was eliminated today got pretty heated outside the arena, and some people were arrested. There were some rumors circulating that the Pirates team was going to relocate to Portland. But given the success of this team, this has to be yet another ownership group, probably from Portland, petitioning to get an expansion team. The odds-on favorites for getting a team place Portland very high on that list. But this has to be a hoax. The team is too good, the attendance has been excellent, and the facility is top-notch. Absolute bullshit. Now, Washington star player Chevy Colella got his tooth knocked out in this game, making that nice red and white power uniform look so much cooler. He'll miss 0 time. Now, for Dallas, leading the way it was Corey Vignali with 4 goals. For the Power, it was Elix Henderson with 6 goals. And for the Pirates, it was Vladimir Millet and Marnie Johnstone with 7 goals each. Wow. Now, and in the end of this one, Seattle picks up the 4 points. Washington, 2 points. Dallas, 0. Now, let's move on now to Denver, where the Sky are hosting Montreal and Salt Lake City. And in this one, Salt Lake City wins again. Salt Lake City 22, Denver 19, Montreal 16. This game was delayed because there was an anti-Trump protest outside the arena. After the sun went down, they got scared and went home. Now, nothing was really on the line in this game except pride, and some teams didn't even show that. Here's looking at you, Montreal. Now, after this game, injured Montreal assistant captain Edwin Milligan criticized his team, saying, "We were really soft down the stretch." You think? You were soft for the whole campaign. This is not gonna gain him any friends. Now, for the Denver Sky, leading the way, it was Vince Howitt and Larry McMaster with 5 goals each. For Montreal, it was J.J. Syverson with 4 goals. And for Salt Lake City, it was Don Kenworthy with 7 goals. And in the end of this one, Salt Lake City picks up the 4 points. Denver, 2 points. Montreal, 0. Now, let's lastly move on to Detroit, where the Rock hosting the Miami and Philadelphia. And this game was delayed for 2 days out of respect for the family and the teammates of Michael Beaton. And since the league went forward with regularly scheduled games after the death of Bello Hess, the league delayed this game to the latest possible time because the optics were just very bad last time. And in this game, it was Miami 18, Philadelphia also 18, Detroit 11. They just can't get a real fricking win. Jesus. Now, Detroit fans use a racial slur on Miami player Nate Taft, saying, "Let's go white boy." They are aware that a good percentage of Delta players are white. Delta fans, racist and dumb. Now, there were some drunk Miami fans at this game, and I understand your team has suffered all season long, and the fact that you're in 18th place with 0 wins on the season and someone actually traveled to Detroit of all places, that is commitment. I think a little latitude is in order for fans of the pink and black. Now, Detroit player Briggs Frederick strained his ACL in this game. It doesn't really matter that he'll be out 3 weeks because the fat lady stopped singing weeks ago. Now, for Detroit, leading the way was Stanislav Muto with 3 goals. For Miami, it was Marquette Weaver with 4 goals. And for Philadelphia, it was Jack Ith with 4 goals. And in the end of this one, Miami picks up 3 points. Philadelphia also 3 points. And Detroit, nothing. Now, let's take a look at the final standings. Leading the way, Seattle, 55 points. Memphis, 46 points. Vancouver, 44 points. Toronto, 42 points. Phoenix, also 42 points. New York, 39 points. Washington, also 39 points. Philadelphia, 35 points. Los Angeles, 33 points. And the playoff line is drawn there. Followed by Atlanta with 32 points. Dallas with 32 points. Denver with 28 points. Salt Lake City, Montreal, and Boston with 27 points. Chicago and Detroit with 26 points. And coming up the rear all bloody year, Miami, 12 points. As a result of this, as you've seen, Philadelphia and Los Angeles clinched playoff berths, and Atlanta and Dallas are eliminated. Now, let's look at the matchups for the Wheel of Fire tournament. We'll have number 1, Seattle versus number 4, Toronto versus number 9, Los Angeles. Game number 2. Number 2, Memphis versus number 5, Phoenix versus number 8, Philadelphia. And in the third game, number 3, Vancouver versus number 6, New York versus number 7, Washington. Now, let's look at the final scoring leaders. Winning the scoring championship, Vladimir Millet, Seattle, 80 goals. Evan Parawal, Seattle, 73 goals. Tommy Anastos, Seattle, 72 goals. Chevy Colella, Washington, 69 goals. Dus Hawthorne, 68 goals. Star Palmer, Chicago, 63 goals. Nan Freeling, Phoenix. Angela Carlucci, Montreal, 62 goals. Lori Moss, Seattle. Nathaniel Mansfield, Dallas. And Bernie Tully, Dallas. And Gerard Stradell, Memphis, 61 goals each. Now, let's move on to the league news before we hit the mailbag. Firstly, the death of Miami player Michael Beaton. The police are directly involved looking at the collapse of that scaffold to rule out foul play or confirm that it was an unfortunate home renovation accident. The family has started a GoFundMe to pay for the funeral costs, so please help them out if you can. Now, the league has announced it will have a moment of silence for Beaton, and there will be tribute merchandise available in Toronto and also through their online store. This has been a pretty heartbreaking season for some teams, no doubt. Now, the Memphis Stadium fire is also still under investigation. We'll have news about the damage and if or when Delta will return to Memphis. The real blessing in this whole incident is that the Wheel of Fire tournament will take place in Toronto and not in some alternate venue due to this unfortunate fire. Now, the commissioner is looking at the tape from the Chicago Pride game where 4 players collected 8 cards. The real hammer here is going to fall on Georgios Stokidis, and he's looking at a lengthy suspension to start next year that could be in excess of 3 games. Now, let's move on to the mailbag. A very short select one. It's from Matty V, and it's in regards to Vladimir Millet. And he says that the injury is just horrible timing for Seattle. Do they still have what it takes to run the board at this tournament? I mean, look at the scoring leaderboard. What team has that? Even without Millet, you have Perowal, Anastos, plus you have Laurie freaking Moss, Rob, Donoff. At least half a dozen players that could explode for half a dozen goals at any time. This team is going to be hard to beat with or without the injuries. If they can get out of their own heads and stick to Delta, this team is offensively gifted and always dangerous. Now, here are my predictions for the Wheel of Fire tournament before we bid everyone adieu. Now, the first game on Friday night will be the first seed Seattle versus 4th seed Toronto versus 9th seed Los Angeles. Seattle, for the first time this year, is experiencing what most teams have gone through all year. They showed a few weeks ago that they have some chinks in the armor, and losing Vladimir Millet this week and Chip Chiozzi a few weeks before that looks to demoralize a team that has appeared to be unstoppable force of nature. Despite LA's little run here, I don't think they stand a chance. But I'm going to go out on a limb and take the hometown Toronto Titans to upset the top seed here. Now, the second game is the 2nd seed Memphis versus the 5th seed Phoenix versus the 8th seed Philadelphia. I really want to cheer for the Shred here, but at some point, the fairy tale will end. Memphis has been good all year, and Phoenix has been good recently. Memphis has survived on their balanced approach rather than the dominance of a small handful of players. That type of team is hard to stop. In the beginning of the year, I called Phoenix a dark horse, and they very well could win here. And I wouldn't call it an upset. But if Philly once again defies the odds and heads to the finals, I wouldn't be that surprised. Now, on to the third game, where it's the 3rd seed Vancouver versus the 6th seed New York versus the 7th seed Washington. I think New York dropping down to the 6th seed is a blessing here. They get a top seed that has actually been very inconsistent lately. Unfortunately, they also have Washington to contend with. No team has been as hot since the trade deadline as Washington. We've been waiting for the letdown from Washington, and it hasn't come. This team has played solidly. New York has been very hot and cold. This week they may be very hot and could head to the finals, but if they come out cold, there's two teams here that could literally feast on their carcass. I'm taking Washington to go to the finals here. This team has turned it around, and they deserve the success they've experienced lately. This whole tournament could go any number of ways. In fact, 27 different ways. As it appears, I've selected Toronto, Memphis, and Washington in the finals, which I believe Memphis will win. Tune in next week when the most exciting time of the year begins with the inaugural Wheel of Fire tournament, and we crown the first champion of Delta League. Until next week, rest in peace, Michael Beaton.